Hey guys, Darren here, and no, this isn't the Fire Emblem Awakening review. That review is still in the works, it's taking a little bit longer than I expected, and I also just recently finished my university courses for the summer, and as such, I haven't had a lot of time the past couple of weeks to work on the review. I'm hoping to have this out before Tales of Xillia 2 releases, that way I can get straight to that game without any distractions, as I'm sure many of you will be curious to see my opinion on that game. So, for Fire Emblem Awakening, just please be a little bit more patient, as I really want to finish that retrospective as well. But here is the first of a video series for RPG Site, which is a website that does reviews and playthroughs and other news articles pertaining to JRPGs and RPGs in general. And I've recently been brought on as a video content creator for them. So basically what this means in terms of the channel going forward is that every month I'll be doing a video or two for RPG Site, and I'll be sharing these videos on this channel as well, so don't feel like you're missing out on anything. And doing these reviews and these videos won't really affect what's happening here on this channel, as I have lots of countermeasures and preparations to consistently create video content throughout the year. So with all that said, I really hope you enjoyed this review of The Legend of Heroes on the PC. Falcom is a Japanese developer best known here in the West for their work on the Ys series, but they have another major series of games. The Legend of Heroes series has never had much of a presence outside of Japan, where the series has annual releases and apparently has been consistently great. Sadly though, the future for the series in the West has largely been uncertain. But luckily enough, the incredibly talented people over at Xseed have given the series a long-deserved release here in the Western market. And no, we don't talk about those other Western releases on the PSP. The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, or its hilariously known abbreviated name, TITS, is technically the 6th game of the Legend of Heroes series. However, Trails starts its own sub-series trilogy, so you don't need any prior knowledge of the previous games before playing this one. Trails in the Sky are originally released in Japan on the PC in 2004. 2 years later in 2006, it was ported onto the PSP. It wasn't actually until 2011 that Xseed released the first chapter of the trilogy, Trails in the Sky, on the PSP in English with plans to translate the entire trilogy. But due to the sheer amount of volume of in-game text, the translation was much more difficult than originally anticipated, and these plans for releasing this trilogy in the West became very uncertain. Thankfully, it was announced in late 2013 that Xseed would be combining their localization efforts in bringing out the second chapter with a translation studio known as Felghana. Not quite sure how to say that. Regardless, this other studio is best known for their translation work on various independent games, like Resetter and Item Shop's Tale. And then, that brings us to today's review of the recent July 29th re-release of The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, which is now available on many different PC digital platforms like Steam or Good Old Games. But this game is now over 10 years old. Is it still worth your time, or is this new release worth revisiting? Let's find out. Our story begins within a district of Roland in the Liberal Kingdom, with our main heroine, Estelle, being shocked at her father's mysterious adoption of a young boy around her age, named Joshua. 5 years pass, and the two have been raised as brother and sister by Estelle's father, Cassius Bright, a world-renowned bracer. In the world of Trails in the Sky, bracers are like odd-job mercenaries who accept a variety of jobs from people, doing things like providing protection in monster-filled areas, solving crimes, and even to finding cats. Wanting to follow in their father's footsteps, Estelle and Joshua have just completed their training and have recently become bracers themselves. As such, much of the game's prologue is spent performing a variety of odd jobs until certain events force Joshua and Estelle into traveling across their kingdom and uncovering many mysteries, including Joshua's past. I won't go any further with this plot synopsis, but I'd be lying if I were to tell you that Trails in the Sky contains the best story ever seen in a JRPG. Not to say the story is bad or isn't interesting, but it does contain many plot points and stories that many fans of the genre should be more than familiar with. But what makes the story and characters of Trails in the Sky stand out is the overall quality of writing. To the most story-important characters to simple town NPCs, every character's dialogue flows exceptionally well, as each character is written uniquely and the writing is genuinely enjoyable to read, and as such, you may find yourselves wanting to speak with everyone in each town. The story does take a while to get going, and ultimately it does end on a cliffhanger as it is the first of a trilogy, but despite that, Trails does an exceptional job at building both its world and its quite large cast of characters with a level of writing that most JRPGs never see. So the story isn't really anything special, but you will want to see it through to the end. The game's two leads, Estelle and Joshua, are incredibly likable characters, with Estelle being an airheaded tomboy and Joshua being a quiet, polite young man with a bit of a chip on his shoulder due to his mysterious past. There are many others that will join this pair in their adventure, and they offer some really funny dialogue, and overall the party has great chemistry that make their interactions all the more believable, with many involving teasing Estelle. One of the more interesting reoccurring character interactions and subplots is the evolving relationship between Joshua and Estelle, with the pair growing increasingly closer as their adventure progresses, even to the point where they may be romantically interested in one another despite being raised as brother and sister. This particular development is handled very well and could have easily been screwed up, so I'm glad it was developed and handled in a very mature manner. Gameplay-wise, Trails of the Sky takes elements from some of the best RPGs and makes them its own. Outside of conversing with townsfolk, the game will have you exploring various field maps and dungeons, with thankfully no random encounters, as monsters are visible and any sort of contact with them will initiate a battle. If you sneak up behind monsters, you can begin the battle with an advantage, giving you a couple free shots on the enemies, but the reverse is also true. Battles are handled in a very strict turn-by-turn manner, with the order of turns being displayed on the left side of the screen. Each party member can perform a variety of actions, from basic attacks that require you to be within a certain distance of the targeted enemy, and you can also move your characters to better position them for upcoming turns. Arts are the equivalent to magic, which can hit any target regardless of position, but at the cost of often taking more than one turn to cast. Some enemies will be weaker to magical attacks and others to physical, but repeat encounters will ensure you will be keenly aware of each monster's strengths and weaknesses. You can also use crafts, which are specific character skills. Aside from an HP and magic meters, each character has a third bar that represents their amount of craft points, or CP. You can generate CP by simply hitting enemies or by being hit, but once you have enough, your characters can use their craft skills. And if any character has over 100 CP, they can use an S-craft, which functions very similar to a limit break. But these S-crafts can be used instantaneously, which can be extraordinarily helpful. Aside from these options, you have regular abilities like using items, defending, or even fleeing, but there's more still to this battle system. Some story missions and side quests will require you to escort certain NPCs through fields filled with monsters, and as such, if you engage in battle during an escort, these NPCs will also appear in battle. More often than not, these NPCs will attempt to find a corner or simply avoid enemies, and if they die, it will result in a game over. But thankfully, you can restart any battle at its beginning, which is an excellent feature more games this genre should definitely use. As well, certain special effects can occur on a turn, from getting a free heal to receiving a guaranteed critical hit on your next attack and other such buffs, but these special effects can also be given to enemies. As a whole, Trails in the Sky has a very rewarding and in-depth battle system, though most encounters don't really take full advantage of this battle system. In fact, most fights throughout the game are total cakewalks up until near the last stretch of the game. Outside of battle, most of your time will be spent talking to NPCs to either further progress the story or engage in side quests, and if there's anything this game has plenty of, it's side quests. As bracers, Estelle and Joshua are expected to accept a variety of odd jobs from a town's bracer guild. Side quests are initiated by first looking at a bracer guild's job board, then meeting and speaking with whoever commissioned the job. These jobs have a surprising amount of variety, from finding specific objects, clearing out monsters, providing escorts, and to even looking for cats. Although there is enough variety to keep these odd jobs from going stale, there's still some clear repetition, like how most jobs at some point will end in a battle with some monsters. Once you finish the job, you must return to the Bracer Guild and speak with the attendant behind the counter to hand in the quest. Most jobs reward a substantial amount of in-game currency, or various items along with a certain amount of bracer points, which increase Estelle and Joshua's bracer ranks. Completing side quests comes highly recommended, as it's one of the best ways to make money in the game, and later when the game's difficulty picks up steam, you may need every cent you can get your hands on. Another feature that you'll be using quite often is the Herbal Factories located in most towns. By trading in septum crystals found in chests or dropped by monsters, you can create quartz, which allow each party member to use magic arts, with every character only being able to equip quartz of a specific type, except for Estelle, who can use whichever you fancy. Each character can only initially equip a few quartz, but you can unlock additional equip slots by trading in a specific amount of different septum crystals. So, it goes without saying that the core fundamental gameplay of The Legend of Heroes Trails of the Sky is rock solid, with many gameplay elements that fans of the genre should appreciate. A lot of your time with this game is spent talking with NPCs and reading text. Even with this game's strong writing, if you aren't one for long conversations and RPGs, this game really isn't for you. Although this game is now 10 years old, it still looks very pleasant visually, although these graphics won't be blowing any minds. Trails has a very appealing visual style with lots of colors in its various 3D environments, and character models are nicely detailed. The game uses the same engine as another Falcom game, Ys the Oath and Felghana, so the two look very similar. Overall, I like how the game looks, and best of all, this game should run on with no problems on modern systems. This new digital version also has seen a few minor improvements, like a new HD resolution and brand new text font to go with it, and as such, this version does run better than the PSP one, which should be expected. The game also has an impressive soundtrack, although I was never quite fond of most battle themes, which remind me of something I'd be hearing in an elevator. Despite that, I really enjoy a lot of the game's other tracks, like the opening theme and various other character-specific themes. The Falcom sound team has always done outstanding work, and this is no exception, although this game's soundtrack is very different from their previous works, but it's still quite good nonetheless. So, ultimately, if you're a fan of JRPGs and you own a PC, I'd highly recommend picking up The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. Although it starts off slow and for the most part it is fairly easy, as well it does end on a huge cliffhanger. But the writing for characters and the world building are so good that everyone should at the very least give this game a chance, especially if you're a fan of working design games like Lunar or Grandia. And after playing this game, I couldn't be more excited for part 2, which hopefully we'll see a release sometime in the near future. That's it for now. If you're interested in seeing more reviews, playthroughs, and other RPG related videos, be sure to subscribe by clicking the button below. Thanks for watching.